links fate and free where two facts for such are aspects of one central law, one unifying and all-embracing principle, namely, the law of causation in its moral aspect. Moral causation necessitates both fate and free will, both individual responsibility and individual predestination. For the law of causes must also be the law of effects, and cause and effect must always be equal. The train of causation, both in matter and mind, must be eternally balanced, therefore eternally just, eternally perfect. Thus every effect may be said to be a thing preordained, but the predetermining power is a cause, and not the fiat of an arbitrary. Man finds himself involved in the train of causation. His life is made up of causes and effects. It is both a sowing and a reaping. Each act of his is a cause, which must be balanced by its effects. He chooses the cause. This is free will. He can effect. This is thus free will stands for the power to initiate causes, and destiny is involvement in effects. It is therefore true that man is predestined to certain ends, but he himself has, though he knows it not, issued the mandate that good or evil thing from which there is no escape, he has, by his own deeds, brought about. It may here be urged that man is not responsible for his deeds, that these are his character, and that he is responsible for the character, good or bad, which was given him at his birth. If character was given him at birth, this would be true, and there would then be no moral law, and no need for moral teaching. But characters are not given ready-made. They are evolved. They are indeed effects, the products of moral law itself, that is, the products of deeds. The character result of an accumulation of deeds which are piled up, so to speak, by the individual during his life. Man is the doer of his own deeds. As such, he is the maker of his own character. As the doer of his deeds, maker of his character, he is the molder and shaper of his destiny. He has the power to modify and alter his deeds. Every time he acts, he modifies his character. And with modification of character for good or evil, he is predetermining for himself new destinies, destinies disastrous or beneficent, in accordance with the nature of his deeds. Character itself as a fixed combination of deeds. It bears within itself the results of those deeds. These results lie hidden as seeds, their seed germination, growth, and fruitage. Those things which befall a man are the reflections of himself. That destiny him by prayer, the relentless pool of his own wrong deeds, demanding and enforcing restitution. Those blessings and curses which come to him unbidden are the reverberant echoes of the sounds which he himself sends forth. Knowledge of the perfect law working through all things, of the perfect justice operating in and adjusting all human affairs, that enables the good man to love his enemy. For he knows that only alone can come to him, and that, though he be surrounded by persecutors, his enemies are but the blind instruments of a faultless retribution. He blames him not, only receives his accounts, and patiently pays his moral debts. But this is not all. He does not merely pay his debts, to contract further debts. He watches himself and makes his deeds faultless. While paying off evil accounts, he is laying up good accounts by entering bringing evil and suffering to an end. And now let us consider how the law operates in particular instances in the outworking of destiny through deeds and character. First, we will look at this present life, for the present is a synthesis of the entire past. The net result man has ever thought and done is contained within him. It is noticeable that sometimes the good man fails and the unscrupulous man prospers. A fact seems to be moral matters as to the goals of righteousness out of account. And because of this, many people deny the operation of any just law in human life, and even declare that it is chiefly the unjust that prosper. Moral law is not converted by shallow conclusions. It should be remembered that man is a changing, evolving being. The good man was not always good. The bad man was not always. Even in this life, in a large number of instances, when the man who is now just was unjust, when he who is now kind was cruel, when he who is now pure was impure. Conversely, there was a time in this life, in a number of instances, when he who is now unjust was just, when he who is now kind, when he who is now impure was pure. Thus the good man who is overtaken with calamity today is reaping the happy result of his present good sowing, while the bad man is now reaping the result of his former good sowing. Later he will reap the result of his present sowing of bad. Characteristics are fixed habits of mind, the results of deeds. An act repeated a large number of times becomes unconscious or automatic. It seems to repeat itself without any effort on the part of the doer, so that it seems to him almost impossible not to do work. And is not a shirker. He wants work and cannot get it. He tries hard and continues to fail. Where is the justice in his? There was a justice man's condition when he had plenty of work. He felt burdened with it. He shirked it and longed for ease. He thought how delightful it would be to have nothing to do. He did not appreciate the blessedness of his lot. His desire for ease is now gratified, but the fruit for which he longed and which he thought would taste so sweet now. He has reached, and there he is compelled to remain till his lesson is thoroughly learned. And he is surely learning that habitual is degrading, that have nothing to do with wretchedness. Work is a noble and blessed thing. His former desires and deeds have brought him where he is, and now his desire for work, his useless search for it, will just as surely bring about its own beneficent result. No longer desiring idleness, his present condition will, as an effect, the cause of which is no longer propagated, soon pass away, and he will obtain employment. And if his whole mind, and he does above all else, then when it comes, he will be overwhelmed with it. It will flow into him from all sides, and he will prosper in his industry. Then, if he does not law of effect in human life, he will wonder why work comes to him apparently unsought, while others who seek it strenuously fail to obtain it. Nothing comes unbidden. Where the shadow is, so is the substance. That which comes to the individual is the product of his own deeds. As cheerful industry leads to greater industry and prosperity, and labor shirked or taken discontentedly leads to a lesser degree of labor and decreasing prosperity, so the conditions of life exceed. They are the destinies wrought by the thoughts and deeds of each particular individual. So also with the vast variety of character, individual reaps what he sows, the nation, being a community of individuals, reaps also what it sows. Nations become great when their leaders are just men. They fall and fade when their just men pass away. Those who are in power set an example, good or bad, for the entire nation. Great is the prosperity of a nation when there shall arise within it a line of statesmen who, having first established themselves in a lofty integrity of character, shall direct the energies of the nation toward the culture of virtue and development of character, knowing that only through personal industry, integrity, and nobility can national prosperity proceed. Still, above all, is the great law, calmly and with infallible justice, meting out to mortals their fleeting destiny. Smile of their hands. Life is a school for the development of character, and all, through strife and struggle, vice and virtue, success and failure, are slowly but surely learning the lessons of wisdom. End of chapter 1. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Andrea Fiore. The Measure of Destiny by James Allen. Chapter 2. The Science of Self-Control. We live in a scientific age. Men of science are numbered by thousands, and they are ceaselessly analyzing, and experimenting with a view to discovery and the increase of knowledge. The shells of our lives, both public and private, are heavy with their load of imposing volumes on scientific subjects, and the wonderful achievements of modern science are always before us, whether in our homes or in our streets, in country or town, on land or sea. There marvelous science for increasing our speed or saving the labor of our hands. Yet with all our vast store of scientific knowledge and its startlingly amazing results in the world of discovery and invention, there is in this age one branch of science which has so far fallen into decay as to have become almost forgotten, a science, nevertheless, which is very important for the mind, where science does serve the ends of selfishness and aid in man's destruction. I refer to the science of self-control. Our scientists study the elements which are outside themselves, with the object of controlling and utilizing them. The ancients studied the elements of forces which were within themselves, with a view to controlling and utilizing them, and the ancients produced such mighty masters of knowledge in this direction that to this day they are held in reverence as gods, and the vast religious organizations of the world are based upon their achievements. Wonderful as are the forces in nature, they are vastly inferior to that combination of intelligent forces which comprise the mind of man, and which dominate and direct the blind mechanical forces of nature. Therefore, it follows that to understand, control, and direct the inner forces of passion, desire, will, and intellect is to be in possession of the destinies of men. Ordinary science are, in science, degrees of attainment, and a man is great in knowledge, great in himself, and great in his influence on the world, in the measure that he is great in self-control. He who understands and dominates the forces of external is the natural scientist, but he who understands and dominates the internal forces of the mind is the divine scientist, and the laws which operate in gaining a knowledge of external appearances operate also in gathering a knowledge of internal varieties. A man cannot become an accomplished scientist in a few weeks or months. Nay, after many years of investigation, can he speak with authority, ranked among the masters of science. Likewise, a man cannot acquire self-control and become possessed of wisdom and peace-giving knowledge which self-control confers, but many years of patient labor, labor which is all the more arduous because it is silent and both unrecognized, unappreciated by others. And he who would pursue this science successfully must learn to stand alone and to be rewarded as far as any outward emolument is concerned. The natural scientist pursues, in acquiring his particular kind of knowledge, the following 5 orderly and sequential steps. 1. Observation. That is, closely and persistently observes the facts of nature. 2. Experiment. Having acquainted with the facts, he experiments with those facts, with a view to the discovery of natural law. He puts his facts through rigid processes of analysis, and so finds out what is useless and what of value, and he rejects the former and retains the latter. 3. Classification. Having accumulated and verified a map by observation, to arrange orderly groups with the object of discovering some underlying law, hidden and unifying principle, which governs, regulates, and binds together these facts. 4. Deduction. He passes on to the 4th step of deduction. From the facts and results which are before him, he discovers certain invariable modes of action, and thus reveals the hidden law of things. 5. Knowledge. Having proven and established certain laws, it may be said of such a man that he knows. He is a scientist, a man of knowledge. But the attainment of scientific knowledge is not the end, great as it is. Men do not attain knowledge for themselves to keep it locked secretly in their hearts, like a beautiful jewel in a dark chest. The end of such knowledge is use, service, the world. Thus, man has become a scientist. He gives the world the benefit of his knowledge, and unselfishly bestows upon mankind the results of all his labors. Thus, beyond knowledge, there is a further step of use, the right and selfish use of the knowledge acquired, the application of knowledge to invention for the common weal. It will be noted that the 5 steps or processes enumerated follow in orderly succession, and that no man can become a scientist who will make any one of them. Without the first step of systematic observation, for instance, he could not even enter the realm of knowledge of nature's secrets, and many silently he discovers the order, nature, and essence of things, perceives the central law or laws which bind them together in harmonious relationship, puts an end to confusion and ignorance. As with the natural scientist, so with the divine scientist, he must pursue, with the same self-sacrificing diligence, 5 progressive steps in the attainment of self-knowledge, self-control. These 5 steps are the same for the natural scientist, but the process is reversed. The mind, instead of being centered upon external things, is turned back upon itself, and the investigations are pursued in the realm of the mind, or of one's own mind. The search for divine knowledge is confronted with that mass of desires, passions, emotions, ideas, and intellections, which he calls himself, which is the basis of all his actions, and from which his life proceeds. This combination of invisible yet powerful forces appears confusedly. Some of them stand apparently in direct conflict with each other, without any appearance or hope of reconciliation. His mind in its entirety, too, with his life which proceeds from that mind, does not seem to have any equitable relation to many other minds and lives about him. And altogether, there is a condition of pain and confusion from which he would fain escape. Thus he begins by keenly realizing his state of ignorance. For no one could acquire either natural or divine knowledge if he were convinced that without study or labor he already possessed it. With such perception of one's ignorance, there comes the desire for knowledge, and the novice in self-control enters upon the ascending pathway, in which are the following steps. 1. Introduction. This coincides with the observation of the natural scientist. The mental eye is turned like a searchlight upon the mind, and ever-varying processes are observed and carefully noted. This stepping aside from selfish gratifications, from the pleasures and ambitions, in order to observe, with the object of understanding, one's nature, is the beginning of self-control. Hitherto, the man has been blindly and impotently borne along by the impulses of his nature, the mere creature of things and circumstances. But now he puts a check upon his impulses, and instead of being controlled, begins to control. 2. Self-analysis. Having observed the tendencies of the mind, they are then closely examined. With the process, the evil tendencies, those that produce painful effects, are separated from the good tendencies, and the various tendencies, with the actions they produce, and the definite results which invariably spring from these actions, are gradually grasped by the understanding, which is last enabled to follow them in their swift and subtle interplay and profound ramifications. The process of testing and proving, and for the searcher, a period of being tested and proved. 3. Adjustment. By this time, the practical student of things divine has clearly before him every tendency and aspect of his nature, down to the profoundest promptings of his mind, the motives of his heart. There is no spot or left which he has not explored and illuminated with the light of self-examination. He is familiar with every weak and selfish point, every strong and virtuous quality. It is considered the height of wisdom to be able to see ourselves as others see us. But the practice of control goes far beyond this. He not only sees himself as others see him, he sees himself as he is. Thus, standing face to face with himself, strives to hide away, no longer defending himself with pleasant flatteries, neither underrating nor overrating himself or his powers, and no more cursed with self-praise or self-pity. He sees the full magnitude of what lies before him, sees nearly ahead the heights of self-control, and knows what work he has to do to reach them. He is no longer in a state of confusion, but has gained a glimpse of the laws which operate in the world of thought. Now begins to adjust his mind in accordance with those laws. This is a process of weeding, sifting, cleansing. As the farmer weeds, cleans, and prepares the ground for his crops, so the student removes the weeds of evil from his mind, purifies it, preparatory to sowing the seeds of righteous actions, which shall produce the harvest of a well-ordered life. 4. Righteousness. Having adjusted his thoughts and deeds to those minor laws which operate in mental activities and the production of pain and pleasure, unrest and peace, sorrow and bliss, now perceives that there is involved in those laws one great central law, which, like the law of gravitation in the natural world, is supreme in the world of mind, a law to all thoughts subservient, and by which they are regulated and kept in their proper sphere. There is the law of justice or righteousness, which is universal and supreme. To this he now conforms. Instead of thinking and acting blindly, nature is stimulated and appealed to by outward things, he subordinates his deeds to this central principle. He no longer acts from self, but does what is right, what is universally and eternally right. He is no longer abject slave of his nature and circumstances. He is master of his nature and circumstances. He is no longer carried hither and thither on the forces of his mind. He controls and guides those forces to the accomplishment of his purposes, thus having his nature in control and subjugation, not thinking thoughts, nor doing deeds which oppose the righteous law, which therefore law deals with suffering and heat. He rises above the dominion of sin and sorrow, ignorance and doubt, and is strong, calm, and peaceful. 5. Pure knowledge. By thinking right and acting right, he proves by experience the existence of the divine law on which the mind is trained, and which is the guiding and unifying principle in all human affairs and events, whether individual or national. Thus, by perfecting himself in acquires divine knowledge, he reaches a point where it may be said of him, as of the natural scientist, that he knows. He has mastered the science of self-control, brought knowledge or out of him. He has acquired that knowledge of self, which includes knowledge of all men, that knowledge of life, which embraces knowledge of all lives. As for all minds are the same in essence, differing only in degree, are framed upon the same law, and the same thoughts and acts, by whatsoever individual they are wrought, will always produce the same results. But this divine and peace-bestowing knowledge, as in the case of the natural scientist, is not gained for one's own self alone. If this were so, the aim of evolution would be frustrated, and it is not in the nature of things to fall short of ripening and accomplishment. And indeed, he who thought to gain this knowledge solely for his own happiness would most surely fail. So beyond the 5th step of pure knowledge, there is still a further one of wisdom, which is the right application of the knowledge acquired, the pouring out upon the world, unselfishly and without stint, results of one's labors, thus accelerating progress and humanity. It may be said of men who have not gone back into their own nature to control and purify it, that they cannot clearly distinguish good and evil, right and wrong. They reach after those things which they think will give them pleasure, and try to avoid those things which they believe will cause them pain. The source of their actions is self, and they discover right painfully and in a fragmentary way, by periodically passing through severe sufferings and lashings of conscience. But he who practices self-control, 5 processes, 5 stages of growth, knowledge, which enables him to act from the moral law which guides the universe. He knows right and wrong, and thus lives in accordance with good and right. He no longer needs to consider what is pleasant or what is unpleasant. He does what is right. His nature is in harmony with his conscience, and there is no remorse. His mind is in unison with the great law, and and there is no more suffering and sin. For him evil is ended, and good is all in all. End of chapter 2. Andrea Fewley. Recording by Andrea Fewley. The Mastery of Destiny, James Allen. Chapter 3. Cause and effect in human conduct. It is an axiom that every effect is related to cause. Apply this to the realm of human conduct, and there is revealed the principle of justice. Every scientist knows, and all men believe, that harmony prevails throughout every portion of the physical universe, from the speck of dust to the greatest sun. Everywhere there is exquisite adjustment. In the sidereal universe, with its millions of suns rolling majestically through space, its systems of revolving planets, its vast nebula, its sea of meteors, and its vast army of comets, traveling through illimitable space with inconceivable velocity, perfect order, and again, in the natural world, with its multitudinous aspects of life, and its infinite variety of forms, there are the clearly defined limits of specific laws, through the operation of which all confusion is avoided, and unity and harmony eternally attained. This universal harmony could be arbitrarily broken, even in one small particular. The universe would cease to be. There could be no cosmos, but only universal chaos. Nor can it be possible in such a universe of law that there should exist any personal power which is above, outside, and superior to, in the sense that it can be quiet or set aside. For whatsoever beings exist, whether they be men or gods, they exist by virtue of such law, and the highest, best, and wisest of all beings would manifest its greater wisdom by complete law, which is wisdom, and than which nothing lies. All things, whether visible or invisible, are subservient to, and fall within the scope of, this infinite and eternal law of causation. As all things seen obey it, so all things unseen, the thoughts and deeds of men, whether secret or open, cannot escape it. Do right, it reckons death. Do wrong, the equal retribution must be made. Perfect justice holds the universe. Perfect justice regulates human life and conduct. All the varying conditions of life, as they obtain in the world today, are the result of this law reacting on human conduct. Man can, and does, choose what causes he shall set in operation, but he cannot change the nature of effects. He can decide what he shall deeds do. He has no power over the results of those deeds. These are regulated by the overruling law. Man has all power to act. Power ends with the act. The result of the act cannot be altered, annulled, or escaped. It is irrevocable. Evil thoughts and deeds produce conditions of suffering. Good thoughts and deeds determine conditions of blessedness. Thus man's power is limited to, and his blessedness or misery is determined by, his own conduct. To know this truth renders life and all the house of wisdom revealed, and the open door to salvation from evil and suffering is perceived and entered. Life may be likened to a sum in arithmetic. It is bewilderingly difficult and complex to the pupil who has not yet grasped the key to its correct solution. But once this is perceived and laid hold of, it becomes as astonishingly simple as it normally strongly. Some of this simplicity and complexity of life be grasped and realizing the fact that, while there are scores and perhaps hundreds of ways in which a sum may be done wrong, there is only one in which it can be done. the right way is found, the pupil knows the right, perplexed that he has mastered the problem. It's true that the pupil, while doing something correctly, may and frequently does think he has done it correctly, but he is not sure. His perplexity is still there. If he is an earnest and apt pupil, he will recognize his own error when it is pointed out by the teacher. So in life, men may think they are living rightly, but they are content through ignorance wrongly. The presence of doubt, perplexity, and unhappiness are sure inclinations that the right way has not yet been found. There are foolish and careless pupils who would like to pass aside because they have acquired a true knowledge of figures, but the eye and skill of the teacher quickly detect and expose the fallacy. So in life there can be no falsifying of results. The eye of the great law reveals and exposes. Twice 5 will make 10 to all eternity, and no amount of ignorance, stupidity, illusion can bring the result up to 11. If one looks superficially at a piece of cloth, he sees it as a piece of cloth. But if he goes further and inquires into its manufacture, and examines it closely and attentively, he sees a combination of individuals, and that all the threads are interdependent. Each thread pursues its own way throughout, never becoming confused with its sister thread. It is this entire absence of confusion between the particular threads which constitutes the finished work a piece of cloth. An harmonious commingling of the thread would result in a bundle of waste or a useless rag. Life is like a piece of cloth, and the threads of which it is composed are individual life. The threads, while being interdependent, are not confounded one with the other. Each follows its own course. Each individual suffers and enjoys the consequences of his own deeds, not the deeds of another. The course of each is simple and definite, the whole forming a complicated, yet harmonious, combination of sequences, action and deed and consequence, cause and effect, and the counterbalancing reaction, consequence, and effect is always in exact ratio with the initiatory impulse. A durable and satisfactory cloth, shoddy material, and the threads of selfish thoughts and bad deeds produce a useful and beautiful life, a life that will wear well and bear close inspection. Each man makes or mars his own life. It is not marred by his neighbor or by external to himself. Each thought he thinks, each deed he does, is another thread, shoddy or genuine, woven into the garment of his life. As he makes the garment, so he must wear it. He is not responsible for his neighbor's deeds. He is not the custodian of his neighbor's actions. He is responsible only for his own deeds. He is the custodian of his own actions. The problem of evil subsists in a man's own evil deeds, and it is solved when those deeds are purified. Says Rousseau, "Man, seek no longer the origin of evil. Thou thyself art its origin. Never be God, never be a different nature from us." Emerson says, "Justice is not postponed. A perfect equity adjusts the balance in all parts of life." There is a profound sense in which cause and effect are simultaneous and form one perfect whole. Thus, upon the instant that a man thinks a cruel thought, a cruel deed, instant he has injured his own mind. He is not the same man he was the previous instant. He is a little viler and a little more, and another thought would produce a cruel and wretched man. The same thing applies to the contrary, the thinking of a kind thought, or doing a kind deed. An immediate nobility and happiness attend it. The man is better than he was before. and a number of such deeds would produce a great and blissful soul. Thus individual human conduct determines, by the faultless law of cause and effect, individual merit or demerit, individual greatness or meanness, individual happiness or wretchedness. What a man thinks, that he does. What he does, that he is. If he is unhappy, restless, or wretched, let him look to himself, for there and nowhere else is the source of all his trouble. Chapter 3. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Recording by Andrea Fiore. The Mastery of Destiny. Without strength of mind, nothing worthy of accomplishment can be done, and the cultivation of that steadfastness and stability of character, which is commonly called is one of the most useful of man. Possession is essentially necessary both to his temporal and eternal of purpose efforts, whether worldly or spiritual, and without it, man cannot be otherwise and dependent on others for that which should be found within himself. The mystery which has been thrown around the subject of cultivation of will, for those who advertise to sell occult advice on the matter for so many dollars, should be avoided and dispelled, for nothing could be further removed from secrecy and mystery methods, which alone strength of will can be developed. The true path of will cultivation is only to be found in the common everyday life of the individual, and so obvious and simple is it that the majority, looking for something complicated and mysterious, pass it by unnoticed. A little logical thought will soon convince a man that he cannot be weak and strong at the same time. He cannot have a strong will while remaining a slave to weak indulgences, and that therefore the direct and only way to that greater strength is to assail and conquer his weaknesses. All the means for that cultivation of the will are already at hand in the mind and life of the individual. They reside in the weak side of his character, by attacking and vanquishing which the necessary strength of will be developed. He who has succeeded in grasping this will proceed in the whole science of cultivation is embodied in the following 7 rules. 1. Break off bad habits. 2. Form habits. 3. Give scrupulous attention to the duty of the present moment. 4. Do vigorously at once what has to be done. 5. Live by rule. 6. Control the tongue. 7. Control the mind. One upon practices the above rules will not fail to develop that purity of purpose and power of success difficult and pass rapidly through every emergency. It will be seen that the first step is the breaking away from bad habits. No easy demand for efforts, and it is by such efforts that the will can alone be invigorated and fortified. If one refuses the first step for admitting to a bad habit because of the immediate pleasure which it affords, one forfeits the right to rule over himself. So far, he who avoids self-discipline and looks about for some occult secrets for gaining willpower at the expenditure of little or no effort on his part is deluding himself and is weakening the willpower which he already possesses. The increased will, which is gained by success in overcoming bad habits, enables one to initiate good habits. While the conquering of a bad habit requires merely strength of purpose, the forming of a new one necessitates the entire be mental and energetic, and keep a constant watch upon himself. As a man succeeds in perfecting himself, it will not be him to observe that of paying scrupulous attention to the duty of the present moment. Thoroughness is a step in the development of the will which cannot be passed over. Slipshod work is an indication of weakness. Perfection should be aimed at, even in the smallest task, not dividing the mind, giving the whole attention to each task that presents itself. Singleness of purpose and concentration of mind are gradually gained. Two mental powers which give weight and worth of character and bring repose and joy to their possessor. The fourth rule, that of doing vigorously and at once whatever has to be done, is equally important. Idleness and a will cannot go together, and procrastination is a barrier to the acquisition of purposeful action. Nothing should be put off until another time, not even for a few minutes. That which ought to be done now. A little thing, but it is of far-reaching importance. It leads to strength, success, and peace. The man who is to manifest a cultivated will must also live by certain fixed rules. He must not blindly gratify his passions and impulses, but must school them to obedience. He should live according to principle and not according to passion. He should decide what he will eat and drink and wear, and what he will not eat and drink and wear, how many meals per day he will have, and how he will have them, at what time he will go to bed, and when he will get up. He should make rules for the government of his conduct in every department of his life, and should religiously adhere to them. To live loosely and indiscriminately, eating and drinking, essentially indulging at the beck and call of appetite and inclination, is to be a mere animal, and not a man with will and reason. Each inmate must be subjugation, and this only began by training the mind and life on certain fixed rules of right conduct. The saint attains to holiness by not violating his vows. The man who lives according to good and fixed rules is strong to accomplish his purpose. The sixth rule, that of controlling the tongue, must be has command of his speech, so that he utters nothing in peevishness, anger, irritability, or with evil intent. The man of strong does not allow his to run recklessly and without check. All these 6 rules, if faithfully practiced, will lead up to the 7th, which is the most important of them all, namely, rightly controlling the mind. Control is the most essential thing in life, yet least understood. But he who patiently practices the rules herein laid down, bringing them into requisition in all his ways and undertakings, will learn, by his own experience and efforts, how to control and train his mind, and to earn thereby the supreme crown of manhood, the crown of a perfectly poised will. End of chapter 4. Recording by Andrea Fiore. Recording by Andrea Fiore. The Mastery of Destiny by James Allen. Chapter 5. Thoroughness. Thoroughness consists in doing little things as though they were the greatest things in the world. That the little things of life are of primary importance is a truth not generally understood, and the thought that little things can be neglected, thrown aside, or slurred over is the root of that lack of thoroughness which is so common, and which results in imperfect work and unhappy lives. When one understands that the great things of the world and of life consist of a combination of small things, and that without this act of small things, the great things would be non-existent, then he begins to pay careful attention to those things which he formerly regarded as insignificant.